Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I'm here with my September wrap-up video. So I'm in the middle of editing my September wrap-up at the moment, and for some reason one of my files, just the very start of the video, the intro and the first couple of books, just for some reason won't upload. So I said, instead of, I'm feeling a little bit lazy now because I'm like at the end of the day and I'm just like, I don't want to set up everything and talk again about these books. So I said I'd just do a very quick intro here and a couple of books, the three books that I'm missing in this video I will just wrap up again another time. But obviously I'll have the links to them and the reviews down below, my written reviews down below, so you guys will be able to see my thoughts on It Was the Last Graduate and the Golden Enclaves by Naomi, Novik, and The Other Black Girl, and those reviews will be down below, but I will talk about them next month instead. So I will continue on with editing this video and you will see the rest of my reviews for all the books that I read in September in a few minutes. The next book I want to talk about, I obviously have a full video review of and vlog, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. That is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. It is the book of the moment, the book of 2023, especially if you were on TikTok. And this is a fantasy book, kind of fantasy romance, I guess. We're following a character called, what is her name? Violet. We're following a character called Violet Sorrengail as she enters what is called the Rider Quadrant, where she is basically going to be training to be a dragon rider. But the thing about Violet is she never thought that she was going to be going into this. She is basically being forced into it by her mother. She always thought that she was going to be a scribe, where she would, be in the office and the libraries and kind of be more scholarly. So she's not really built in many ways for something that is very, very physical. In all aspects of things, it feels like isn't something she might survive. There's a very high chance of her dying, and this is a very brutal training. The cadets are almost encouraged to kill each other. So yeah, so I really enjoyed this one. It wasn't the most amazing book I've ever read, but in terms of books about dragons, which I can sometimes be picky about how dragons are portrayed, particularly how dragon riding is portrayed in books, I really enjoyed this. And yeah, I'm really excited to read the next one. I read another book in the Maeve Kerrigan series, that is Let the Dead Speak by Jane Casey. In this book, we are following Maeve and her partner Josh Derwent as they investigate this, what feels like it must be a murder, but there's no body. So there's this house where a daughter went in after staying for a weekend with her dad. She went home to her mum and her mum's house, and there's basically blood everywhere, blood all up the walls, but there is no body. So Maeve and Josh come in and they are investigating it, and we see kind of again, a progression of their relationship. We see things going on in their personal life, but also as they slowly kind of figure out what might have happened to this woman, they start investigating the neighbours, and some of the neighbours are a little bit suspicious. There's some neighbours in particular that are quite religious and not particularly, don't seem to be particularly nice people. So the gaze kind of falling on them, did they do something, and are they hiding something, are they covering something up? So they're kind of seeing if that leads to anywhere. This one I liked. It's definitely not my favorite in the series. It feels not necessarily like a filler book, but for Derwent, he has things going on in his personal life. We kind of see a softer side of him in many ways. We see kind of a nice, him and Maeve are actually quite steady in this book. They're quite supportive of each other and there for each other. In ways they're not as antagonistic as they have been in previous books. And then near the end of this book, we see something really rock Maeve. Something happens where we're going to see that her struggle with that, I think, in the next book, but we see her find out something that's just really, really hard for her to hear. And Derwent is there for her, and I just live for those moments. I love them. I just love the relationship between them so much. But in terms of the investigation in this one, it was fine, but I figured out part of the book really early on. I figured out kind of one of the main parts. The book kind of has it kind of splits off into two different directions, but part of the book, the first part, I figured it out almost straight away, and it was almost frustrating to read and to see what was so obvious. And these characters, particularly Maeve, who's very clever and very intuitive, that she wasn't figuring it out. So it was kind of frustrating as a reader to be watching that. But again, I just like this series. I have the next one lined up, which I'm hoping to read by the end of October, but we will see. So yeah, this one was a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Sixth Event. This is a book that is just one of those really old NetGalley books I just wanted to tick off, and this is it's kind of a YA apocalyptic novel or YA sci-fi. It's kind of interesting. We are following a character called Raquel, who is in her first semester, I think, of college, and something really weird happens, like the electricity starts going funny, the sky turns a different color, and next minute like rocks are like raining from the sky like a meteor, and Raquel ends up getting hit by one of these rocks and she dies. And then she wakes up and I think it's 2 years in the past, so she is now in her, I think it's maybe sophomore year of high school. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's 2 years in the past anyway. She's 16 now instead of 18, and she realizes that no one else like knows what has happened. She can still remember everything like that had gone on in her life, but no one else seems to remember anything. So she realizes that when she died, she ended up like going back into the past, and now her and this other boy who went to high school with her, they're the only two that seem to know that like in 2 years that like the world is going to end, and they have to figure out if there's other people in the world like them, and if they have these kind of like abilities to be able to like time travel and stuff, and to try and figure out if they can basically stop the world from ending. This was like interesting, but it ended up not being like absolutely like great for me in any way. Like there's like this thing of Raquel, like she keeps giving out about how like, oh my god, like she can't believe she has to like deal with like 16-year-old problems and hang out with these teenagers that are like 16 because she's so grown up, because she's 18 and she had started college. And like I understand that to like a degree, but I'm like, you were only 18 and they're 16. There's not a, and I think maturity wise there's not like a huge difference between 16 and 18. I'd believe it more if it was like 16 and 21. Like that's a huge like maturity, like age range, like life experience. That's all very, very different. But the way she was going on about like being like 18 and hanging out with 16-year-olds, I was like, I'm pretty sure there's like age gaps in high school enough that like you would be in the same, sometimes you'd be in the same classroom as like a 16-year-old when you're 18. Like it's not a big deal, but it was kind of funny. The travel aspect of this was fine. It was kind of this one where they were like time traveling to like prehistoric time, so it wasn't a time that like other humans ever existed. They were going like to see the dinosaurs and stuff, and there was like an element of that was actually genuinely interesting. I'd never read anything that had kind of like explored this before, but the story itself, like it never surprised me in any way. There was never any of these like, the stakes I feel like weren't high enough. I was never like really afraid for the characters. Everything kind of felt like they kind of figured a lot of things out like so easily. I was like, it just, not that like it seemed believable because they're like time traveling to dinosaur era, so like obviously not believable, but like there was just something about it that I was like, I just need more, like I need more oomph to the story. It was just very like meh. Like I just, like it had kind of the building blocks of something that could be really good, really unique, but it just needed more action, more drama, kind of a little bit more of everything. So this one was more of like a 2-star for me. Next book I read was He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. This is the second book in the, is it the Radiant King? Yeah, the Radiant King trilogy. The first book was She Who Became the Sun. I don't know why I can remember that. So this one we are following on from a lot of the events that happened in the first book, of which there were a lot of them. We are following a character called, I'm calling her Zoo, but I'm actually not sure if I'm saying that correctly. But she was born a girl, and then when her brother died when she was young, and she ended up taking on his identity. So for the rest of the world, they see her as a man, but she uses like she, her pronouns throughout the book, unless someone is talking to her and doesn't know that she is actually a woman. But she is she is now king, but she wants to become emperor, so she is leading her army. She is trying to team up with an enemy of hers from the first book, who is a really interesting character who I really, really like, and has a really like unique, interesting backstory that I loved in the first book, and we're seeing him deal with the fallout of that in the second book, and dealing with grief and dealing with a lot of really dark thoughts, and we're seeing how he kind of has to team up with Zoo, who he hated in the first book, but then kind of ends up having this like grudging respect for, and the two of them have this like really, their dynamic is just really fun to read, and you kind of like, you don't really know what's going to happen between them, but they kind of feel like in a way two halves of a whole that like are just so good together when they're on page. They're brilliant together when they're on page. So we're kind of following that as Sue was kind of going closer and closer to her dream of becoming emperor, but there's so many other things going on, like politically there's loads of other people playing their hand at trying to topple what's like the Mongol dynasty at the time, or the Mongol era. I really took my time with it, which I really appreciate, because sometimes I like zoom through books, but there's books like this one. There's so much information going on, and there's so much I want to take in. I want to remember it, I want to kind of savor the writing and the story and the characters. I think the characters in this are just brilliant, and the way that like gender identity is explored is just is just so good. I just love it so much. The way like there's questions raised about like gender, like what makes a man, what makes a woman, why is one better than the other like in this time period, and like why would your opinion change when you already know someone and you find out something else about them, like why should that like change your opinion about them, when like why does it like color their achievements in any way. And I just loved how that was all explored in this book. I thought it was done really, really well. And this is a book that I don't think I realised how much I enjoyed it until I was finishing it. I had finished it and I was kind of thinking back about it. That's when I actually really was like, oh no, I really, really enjoyed this book. This one was a very easy 5 out of 5 stars. And then I was in the mood for something a little bit sweet, a little bit romantic, so I went with Sleet Sugar by S.J. Tilley. This is kind of like a Kindle Unlimited romance book. It is a hockey romance. It is the second book in a trilogy. The first book is Sleet Kitten, which I read earlier in the year, I think, and this one, Sleet Sugar, we are following a character called Isabel, who has had very much like a pretty long dry streak with her dating life. She like, just hasn't really had much luck, and she wants to get back out there. So with the help of her friends, she ends up going on kind of like just like a hookup site. She says she just wants to have like a really nice night, get back out there, kind of, loosen up the joints and stuff like that, a little bit of oil, loosen her up, and then she'll have that kind of nice night, and then she can kind of get back out there into the dating world and see what is actually out there for like a long-term relationship. She ends up meeting up with Zach, who is this tall, bronzed, hunky god of a man, and she meets up with him in the bar. Obviously is extremely sexually attracted to him straight away. He's attracted to her, and they have a really great night of sex, and she thinks that this is really fun, but it's he's only probably like in town for a little bit. I'm never going to see him again. So like she kind of slipped out in the middle of the night and was like, she'll remember it, but this, that, or the other. And then the next day or the day after, she is in her office. She works in the same offices as her dad. Her dad is the coach of the town hockey team, and he introduces her to the new player of the hockey team, and it is obviously Zach. So Zach is now, she's going to be seeing him like every single day. He's going to be working very closely with her dad. The two of them have like really like sexual chemistry, romantic chemistry, and when she thought she was never going to see him again, now she's going to see him every day, and she has to kind of fight her feelings for him while he is very like intent on pursuing her, and he's like making it clear that he really likes her and would like it to go further, but she has kind of like been burnt before by hockey players. She kind of wants to try and avoid them, and there's so many different reasons why she feels like it wouldn't be good for her to try things out with Zach. I loved this. I love this so much more. I really like the first book in this series, but there were certain elements of it that kind of gave me a little bit of the ick. Like he kept calling her like kitten all the time, like in front of her friends and stuff, which I thought was just like gross. But in this one, he calls her sugar, or he calls her like sweet, or like my sweets or whatever. And there was just something about that was just like so much nicer and so much cuter, and I just loved how he was really clear from the start that like he really liked her. He wanted to go somewhere, and he was there for her when she would decide that she wanted to do it too. She wanted to go for it as well. And there was like some things like alluded about his background of like he didn't have a great family life, and he was kind of alone, and this, that, and the other. And every single other book with a male character like that, they would be like really emotionally distant, and they'd be like, oh, but like I'm not good for you, so I'm going to stay away from you. Like I won't be able to fall in love with you because I'm emotionally damaged, this, that, or the other, which I've seen in other books. Where in this one, he like owned his past, he like recognized it, but also he didn't let him stop him from falling in love and like trying to pursue a healthy relationship, which I loved. I just thought it was like he was so emotionally mature, which I feel like you don't see a lot in these books. So I really enjoyed that. There wasn't like there's not like loads and loads of smut in this. There's only like 2 or 3 scenes maybe, but those that were there were like really hot, really sexy, and yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. I gave it a really strong 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm looking forward to reading the third book, which is Sleet Banshee, which follows one of the wilder friends in the friend group. So I'm looking forward to seeing her relationship now with another hockey player. So yeah. Then I listened to an audiobook which was Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard. I think this is Catherine Ryan Howard's latest book. So I've read the last 3 thrillers of hers. So I read 56 Days, I have read The Nothing Man, and now I've read Runtime. So Runtime is kind of like a book about a movie about a script. Like, this is like, it's kind of like Inception, it kind of feels like. So we are following a character who, her name is Adele. She is an actress and she is struggling in LA. She's moved to LA from Ireland and is trying to get acting gigs after like things happened at on a set in Ireland that kind of has tarnished her reputation. So she's trying to start fresh, but she's really, really struggling. And then she gets this call that this movie, the actress has dropped out, they need someone really quickly, and would she be willing to do it? She has to fly home to Ireland to do it, and she's not allowed to tell anyone. It's kind of like there's like, you know, a non-disclosure agreement on it. She has to keep the secrecy, but it's a really good opportunity for her, so she says yes, that she'll do it. And she flies home and goes to this set, which from the start is just really off. She's the only woman on set. She's around a lot of these guys who are just like arseholes to her, not treating her right. She feels a little bit vulnerable, and then as she everything about it is like very, very unprofessional, not done very well. And then the day after the first kind of scenes that she does, she ends up waking up and she's like completely alone on the set, and the things that are happening in the movie start kind of happening to her in real life, and she is getting really freaked out. She doesn't know what is happening, and she kind of feels like someone is out to get her. And then we are also seeing excerpts of the script, which is about a woman staying in this like Airbnb type of like bungalow, or this holiday home with her boyfriend, and they're after having a fight, and she's reading this book that was written by someone attached to the person who owns this holiday house. And in that book, it's about a couple staying alone, and the girl starts being pursued. And as this woman is reading this book, all these things start to happen to her that feels like it's mirroring what is happening in the book. So it's kind of, as I said, it's kind of Inception based. It's kind of like an Inception type of storyline in terms of like things are repeating itself. Things that are happening in the book are repeating itself in the script. Things that are happening in the script are repeating themselves in the real life that we are following of Adele. So which was fine, but it kind of got a little bit like repetitive in a way that kind of, I was just kind of like, okay, like, let's get on with it. There's also so many points where I was like, if I was her, I would just like she was going out and she was like running like down the road in the forest. I was like, if I was her, I would just go back into my cabin, lock the door, go into bed, and be like, if you want to murder me, you can just come in and murder me, because like, fuck that, I'm not going outside, like, leave me alone. Like, I feel like I would have been like, just like lay down in the bed and like let myself be murdered, because there's no way I'm going to be running down a forest road in the pitch dark, and yeah, absolutely not. So yeah, this was fine. This was like a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought the ending was a little bit weak. I would have liked it to have been a lot more twisty than it was. I kind of figured it out at one point. I kind of was like, oh, I think this is what's going on. And it was what's going on. So I just would have liked a little bit more of a surprise, a little bit more of a twist. And yeah, I picked up a classic book, and that was The Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield. This was originally published in the 1930s, and we are basically following this, like, the diary entries of a woman who's kind of supposed to be E.M. Delafield, and she is just talking about her day-to-day life as a mother and as a wife, kind of running her household, and also the people that she meets every day, from like her, like, kind of the high, like the how-to-do upper ladies of the village that like just really annoy her, and then also like the vicar's wife who comes in and like talks so much that she like never leaves, and it's really funny. So there are parts of this that were like quite funny, and there's other parts I just felt like, I think I thought it was going to be funnier than it was, and it wasn't quite. I wouldn't like, I think it's like it was fun and amusing, but it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. I really, really love this edition of the book though. I think it's like so lovely and gorgeous, but I don't think this is one that I'm going to keep on my shelf. I might give it to my gran and see if my gran likes it. She might like it to read. But as like classics go, it's definitely not one of my favorites, so I will probably pass it on to someone else. Then I read a book that made me sob like a baby, and that was The Winners by Fredrik Backman. This is the 3rd book in the Beartown trilogy, the first 2 which I also absolutely loved. This one, the rivalry between Beartown and the neighbouring town head kind of really come to a head, because a storm rolls in, there's a lot of like damage done to both towns, but at this point in time, Beartown is kind of getting all the money, and Head is kind of being left to kind of just like dwindle away in a way. In a way, we are following characters who had left in the second book to go on and like kind of explore the world a little bit more. They come back because they have to come back for a funeral, and they come back into town, and basically we know that at the end of the book something really tragic is going to happen. This is something that has been like, you know, we've basically been told since the very first book that this thing is going to happen, so it's not a surprise, but you're like building up to this big thing that's going to happen, that's going to change so much for all of the characters that we're following, all of the characters that we love, like characters that we've grown to like really, really love. And the way Fredrik Backman is just able to like pull your emotional heartstrings in his writing is so good. But also sometimes, like the second book, I did say I felt like emotionally manipulated with it, because I felt like, you know, like we're like there's so much foreshadowing with like so much in this series, that at times it can get a little bit much, and I thought I kind of would feel like that with this one. I did at times, and also with what was going to happen, which I knew was going to happen because I said it's been foreshadowed since the very first book that this thing is going to happen. I was like, well, because I already know, we've known for ages that this is going to happen, I'm not going to feel upset. And I was wrong. I was so upset when this thing happened, even though I knew it was going to happen. And literally, it was one of those books that, like, when I finish it, I had to like calm myself down, because I could feel like like one of those like really big sobs that you just need to like let out loose. You almost like need to wail it out. I could feel it like right in my throat. So I just had to be like, like I felt like I was like, if I start to like properly cry, I feel like I will never stop for these characters, like for the loss that they're after having, for the loss of life, like so sad about it. So yeah, that is what happened. But I just love this. I just think the characters are so good, the way we followed them for so long. We see them go on so much of an up and down journey. There's so much compassion, there's so much like what it means to be human, all the lovely things, but also the horrible things of being human. I think it does like sports fanaticism very well, and I think like every town, every area has some sort of sports team or something like that that can like rile people up in such a way. Like I think it's done in a ways you're like, oh no, like could this be realistic? But I think it can be. You definitely see, especially with smaller towns where a lot of like the big, you know, the championships or like the success of these boys or girls on these teams, like that's like such a big thing for like small communities like this, and it really brings people together. So I could definitely really understand the fanaticism, some of the behavior of some of the people in this book, because it's almost like all they have to like look forward to or to root for in like in amongst just like the day-to-day of their lives. So yeah, I just thought it was done really, really well. I just love this trilogy. I really love Fredrik Backman's writing. So yeah, this was another easy 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book I finished in October was This Much Is True by Miriam Margolyes. This was my non-fiction pick of the month. And this is one, I think my gran gave this one to me to read. I wasn't originally going to read this, but then I heard kind of funny things about it, and then my gran read it, and I think she quite enjoyed it, so she gave it to me to read. So I decided to pick it up, and yeah, I just really enjoyed finding out more about Miriam Margolyes. I didn't know too much about especially her like earlier career, which I thought was really interesting, just in terms of like how she grew up. Kind of, she was born in the middle of World War II. She is born within a Jewish family, which I actually didn't know. So she's a Jewish woman, and she's a very proud Jewish woman. And she's talking about her parents relationship, with her growing up, and how you know, she thinks about her parents in certain ways. And I just thought like a lot of her like frankness and honesty in this was like really nice to read. There's definitely times where like, you know, I think there's times where like interviews and stuff, she definitely is a little bit of a, like an attention seeker. She says things to get a reaction, and I kind of liked how she basically admits to that in this book. She's like, you know, that she likes having the attention and she wants people to like her, so she will like go out of her way to make people like her. And I was like, okay, like I feel like you can see that sometimes in interviews that she does. There were definitely some like laugh out loud moments in this, like that were kind of, you know, went hand in hand with some of like her crude stories, or, you know, some of the explicit stuff that she said or did. And I kind of enjoyed how like she kind of gave her opinions on like certain actors. There was ones that she said were like horrible, ones that she said were really nice. She said Leonardo DiCaprio was really smelly when she did Romeo and Juliet. In the way, I like to caveat that with, he was smelly in the way that like young men are kind of smelly, like not necessarily in a really bad way, but they just like smell. But she said when she met him later when he was older that he smelled really nice, so he obviously improved that situation. But yeah, it was just really interesting seeing her like tidbits from like certain movies and stuff that she did, and her friendships that she's had, and just like such a long spanning career that's like really really impressive, and she's like a very very talented person. So yeah, I enjoyed this. It wasn't amazing. Like I'm not like a massive fan of her, but I thought in terms of looking at like BBC radio in particular, like the radio plays before television kind of took over, and then her career within plays, and then her career in Hollywood and movies and stuff, and how that all spanned and how she felt about it all, was just really interesting to follow. So I gave it a 4 to 5 stars, and yeah, I enjoyed it. So that is everything I read. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys again next time.